Yes, Trump and JD Vance were right to berate Zelensky, and I'm going to tell you why. So, I've actually wrestled with making this video, and the reason why I decided to make it is I've been listening to the media. It's Saturday today. I've been listening to the media on Friday when this news broke, with basically the way it's been reported is that Trump and JD were attacking Zelensky and embarrassing him and forcing him to apologize and things. There's all the things they've said about him or about them. But I've been listening to that all day Friday. Same thing Saturday morning. That's all I'm hearing in the media. And I started getting curious. So I was looking for, greater context as to what actually happened there. And I ended up finding the full video of what you would call, I guess it was like a press briefing or something along those lines. Basically, the context of what the clips that you've seen or heard is that they were in the, I guess it was the Oval Office. The press was there, and they were kind of having like a question and answer type of period. And after that, they were going to go to lunch, and then they were going to negotiate. And that's what was supposed to happen. Now, they ended up getting into a big argument, which is some of those clips that you saw. And Trump decided to send Zelensky home. And like I said, the media has been outraged over this. Left-wing media, right-wing media, basically, at least in Canada, left and right-wing media are all against Trump on this issue. And it's really annoying to me because that's not what happened. And they've taken the whole thing out of context. Zelensky was the one that was out of line and was being unreasonable. And I'm going to explain why. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip of Zelensky. So remember, this is a 49-minute video that I watched. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip of Zelensky basically saying that under no circumstances would he agree to a ceasefire.
I have more serious things than answer on such question. I will answer on more serious question if I can. Yeah, so please, about security guarantees and about just ceasefire. We can't just speak about ceasefire and speak and speak. It will not work. Just ceasefire will never work because I'm like a president. I have this experience, and not only me. Ukraine before my presidency, from the 2014, Putin broken 25 times. 25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke to me.
No, you were the president. You were the president during.
He never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr. President. You've been the president, but he had, of course, not with you, but he had during those periods. He had conversations with our side, and we had Normandy format. The France, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia, and he broken 25 times. That's why we will never accept just ceasefire. It will not work without security guarantees. Security guarantees, maybe President is right about this document and other, but this document is not enough. Strong army is enough.
So I bet you didn't see that clip in the media, did you? And it gives a little bit more context to what happened later on. The actual argument was probably 15 or 20 minutes after that. If that was the first time you saw that clip, I would like you to go watch it again and watch Trump's body language as Zelensky is saying that he's not going to agree to a ceasefire, and or he's not going to agree to a ceasefire without additional security provided. Okay. And you'll notice that Trump, you can tell his demeanor starts to change. He's looking like he's annoyed, and he was very relaxed at the beginning. You can tell that like Trump was in a much better mood, and he was more relaxed at the beginning. And then as the conversation goes on, you can tell that he's getting upset. But here's the thing, even though he was upset at what Zelensky said, he held his tongue. And it wasn't until 15 or 20 minutes later that he got annoyed with Zelensky enough that it turned into that argument that we saw. And here's the thing that I want to say about Zelensky. Later on, when the argument occurred, Zelensky reiterated that he was not going to agree to a ceasefire. What's important about this is that Trump wanted the ceasefire to stop the killing. He said it over and over again in that meeting, and I doubt that the media picked up on any of it. He said he wants to stop the death. He wants to stop these men on both the Ukrainian and the Russian side from dying. And he wanted to start with a ceasefire so the killing stops, and then he would negotiate further. But basically, Zelensky is saying, I'm not going to do that. And so that's when, like, I started thinking, from Trump and JD's perspective and from Zelensky's perspective, what's going on here? And I think Zelensky thought that he could go into the White House and sign the resources agreement and then get additional money, potentially weapons, and maybe even troops, right, to have security. And I thought that he thought he could go in and figure out a way to position himself to continue the war. And I think that JD and Trump, they picked up on that. And that's not why they brought him there. So that's why they got angry, because they brought him there thinking that he was going to actually, in good faith, try to proceed with some sort of a negotiation to end the war. And that would start with a ceasefire. And he basically comes in and says, but, I'm not going to agree to a ceasefire unless you give me more stuff. And the whole point is that the United States already gave Ukraine. Now, Trump is saying like 350 billion. Other sources say like 200 billion. I don't care. The number is huge. And I did do some research, and the United States has given more than all of Europe combined. Okay. Regardless of which numbers you use, it's still more. Okay. So the United States has already been the biggest supporter, and Trump has had enough. This war has been going on for 3 years. It's still basically in a stalemate. You have hundreds, if not thousands of people dying every single week. These are real people, right? It's easy to forget that. It's easy to be like, I'm pro-Ukraine, Russia is bad. And it's easy to forget that it's like, those are real people that are dying. They have fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters and children. And those lives are either gone or ruined forever. Okay. And every day that this war continues, Ukraine loses more and more of its young men. And when the war is finally over, like let's say this war continues for a few more years. And remember, we're going to get into this too, is that it's getting to the point here where Zelensky and the Ukrainian government, they're basically drafting people, and in some cases kidnapping them off the street to go fight on the front lines, because even their own men don't want to fight the war, right? And think about all the refugees. Do you remember when the war started, or just when it started, Zelensky closed the borders of Ukraine and he wouldn't let the men leave the country? Do you remember that? Well, I met a guy who just made it out of the country. He's in Canada working now. And maybe I'll do another video on him. That's like a whole other story. But anyways, he's in Canada working. I ended up doing a job with him. We got to talking. I wasn't like probing him or trying to get him to tell me things. This was just conversation. And he told me he left just before Zelensky locked the border. And he wasn't a big fan of Zelensky, by the way. He didn't like him. Okay. And it would explain it. If he didn't want to fight the war, then he probably wouldn't like Zelensky, right? And but there's lots of people who didn't make it out. So you've got a government that's having trouble getting their own people to fight the war, and then they're running around trying to get money and weapons from other countries to fight the war. Just think about that from that perspective. Okay, so I think that Zelensky thought that he was going to be able to get more resources to fight the war. And when he realized that that probably wasn't going to happen, he starts saying things which, aggravate Trump and Vance. And remember, this is in like somebody else's country, in their, it's basically their house, the White House, right? In their house, in front of the media, right? And you're trying to make them look bad. Another thing he said in the clip was, this document is not enough. Strong army is enough. So that's more proof that Zelensky was there to get more resources, more money, and more weaponry, and maybe even troops. I don't know what he thought he was going to get by going to the White House, but he clearly was not on the same page as Trump and JD Vance. Trump and JD Vance actually wanted to stop the war. They're not just saying that, they actually want to stop the war, believe it or not. I know some people think that Trump could never do anything good, but they actually want to stop the killing. They're telling the truth, guys. If they wanted to continue the war, that's easy. They could just go along with Zelensky and end up giving him more money, more weapons. They actually want to stop the war. Anyways, I'll get into more context here, especially when I do the recap at the end. I don't want this video to go on, for like an hour. It could easily be an hour. But Zelensky, in the position that he's in, where he is, he should have been a lot more tactful in front of the American media. I think it was very disrespectful for him to proceed the way he did. If he didn't want a ceasefire, if he didn't want to agree to these things, he can do it all behind closed doors. He doesn't have to, he could just decline to answer those questions. He doesn't have to like poke the bear, so to speak. Okay. The next clip I'm going to play for you is after things started to get a little bit heated. And some of these clips you may have heard in the mainstream media. And so I'm going to roll that and then I'll give you my comments on that.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position.
So there Zelensky was saying that Russia would not, have any diplomacy, that he was going to break his deals. And then JD Vance basically told him, like, the type of diplomacy that's going to prevent the destruction of your country. And I think he's right. If this war continues the way it's going, especially without additional weapons and money from the United States, Ukraine is going to lose the war. Every day, more and more of their country is destroyed. And JD Vance is right about that. They're trying to stop the destruction. That's actually what's going on. And then Zelensky, at the end of that clip, he told Trump, and I think I don't know if people like glossed over this, or if this, I can't remember if this was one of the clips that has been played over and over in the media. I doubt it. But Zelensky told Trump, you're not feeling it now, but you're going to feel it. And some people said, well, that was a veiled threat. I don't necessarily know that was a veiled threat, but once again, that was it could have been, but that was a very disrespectful thing to say to the president in front of his media, telling him that you know better than him, and that, the most powerful country in the United States is going to feel the pain if you don't do what I want. That's basically how that came off. And Trump, rightfully so, put him in his place, right? And he said, you don't tell us how we're going to feel, right? Basically, we'll decide how that's going to go. You're not in any position to tell us how we're going to feel. And he's right. It's the mainstream media that's cherry picking these clips. And they're taking the clips that, out of context, make Trump and JD look like they're being bullies and that they're just picking on Zelensky in front of the media. And that's not what happened here. I'm gonna run one more clip and then I'm gonna give my final thoughts. So this is the clip of Trump. It's not the full clip, but it's a good portion of it. Of Trump when he's leaving the White House. I think he's going to something in Florida. It doesn't really matter, but he's basically on the tarmac and he's talking to reporters. And he reiterates that they need the ceasefire, that Zelensky wasn't willing to even do a ceasefire, and that Trump cares about preventing deaths, and that he cares about everybody. He's not on one side or the other. He just wants to prevent people from dying. And I feel that he's genuine, right? I know that there's people that hate Trump, that no matter what you say, Trump can never do anything right, can never say anything right. There's people that think that this guy is the devil, right? The people with the TDS, they literally, I've gotten into conversations with people where no matter what I say, no matter what proof that I provide, they'll never admit that Trump could ever do anything good. And everything he does is with bad intentions in their mind. I'm not here to convince you. If that's you, I'm not here to convince you because you're too far gone. These are the types of clips that the media does not play of Trump, where he's telling you what he's thinking and what he's trying to accomplish, and it just gets completely missed. So we'll play the clip.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week, soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody.
So now that you've seen a little bit more of the story, has it maybe changed your perspective? If you were against Trump and JD Vance, has it maybe changed your perspective? And here's the thing. If you're still on the side of Zelensky here, that's fine. You're entitled to whatever opinion you want. I actually do believe in free speech, unlike a lot of people. But what I would say is if you're not for, like, let's say Zelensky, like you're agreeing with Zelensky. If you're not for a ceasefire and you're not for an end to the war, and you don't think, because Zelensky basically said, I'm not going to give up any land, and I don't want a ceasefire because Russia's going to break it. That was basically what he said, to summarize. If you agree with Zelensky, I got a few questions for you. One would be, have you ever put yourself in Zelensky's shoes and thought, like, does saying that you don't want a ceasefire, does it even do you any good? Like, here's what I would do if I was Zelensky. Because Zelensky's saying no matter what, Russia's going to break the ceasefire. So what I would do if I was Zelensky, instead of in front of the media telling Trump that he's wrong and that Russia will always break the ceasefire, what I would do is I would agree to the ceasefire. And then when Russia breaks the ceasefire, then Zelensky could go to Trump and say, see, I told you so. And now Zelensky has more credibility, and Trump would trust him more and probably try to negotiate things more in his favor. But I think that Zelensky couldn't do that because I don't think that Zelensky actually wants the war to end. And that's why I think he was there, to try to get more resources. But I don't think that he actually wants the war to end. And that's why he said he wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. And Trump is like, well, how are we going to negotiate? How are we going to stop the killing if we can't even start with a ceasefire? So you can see where that's why they're butting heads, and that's why there was that explosion. So that's one thing I'd like to point out. The other thing I'd like to point out is, if you agree with Zelensky and you think that Zelensky should never agree to any sort of like end to the war or peace deal that leads to Russia gaining some of Ukraine's land, once again, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But what I would say is even if you think Russia's in the wrong, that's fine. But what I would say is what is your alternative? Because it's easy to say that Trump is wrong and Vance are wrong and Zelensky's right and I'm with Ukraine. It's easy to say that. But if that's your position, what's your exit strategy? How do you end the war? Can you only end the war by defeating Russia? Have you thought about how that works out? So let me give you a few options. If having a peace deal where Russia at least gets a few things that they want is not okay with you, then let me give you a few other options of how things might play out. So one would be things continue as they are. Let's say let's say the United States stops giving weapons and support to Ukraine, but let's say Europe and Canada and Australia continue to do that. Okay. So then the war continues on. Let's say it just continues on the way it is. So then every day, dozens of people die. Maybe it's hundreds a week, thousands a week. And this is just going to go on. Like at some point, some people are saying, well, maybe at some point we might wear down Russia and they'll give up. I wouldn't count on it. It's been 3 years. If you had said 3 months in, yeah, okay, let's give it some time. Maybe Russia will get tired of it and leave. I don't think they're going to leave. I don't think Trump thinks they're going to leave. And I think without the United States support, I don't think that even with, money and weapons from other countries, I don't think that Ukraine can win that war. I think eventually Russia grinds down Ukraine and Russia wins. And then you know what happens? Ukraine loses a lot more land and men than they already have. So that's like option number one. Option number two is, well, we've got to defeat Russia. So let's get NATO involved and NATO will fight Russia. Okay. So NATO fights Russia. NATO can probably beat Russia, but that would be NATO without the United States. I don't think he's not going to get involved. Trump's not going to get involved. So NATO without the United States, could they take on Russia? Probably. Okay. So NATO takes on Russia without the United States. And let's say you start winning a conventional war against Russia. Do you think Russia's just going to give up? Do you think Russia's going to let NATO take over Russia and tell Russia how to run their politics in their country? I don't think so. And Russia has said that they take that as an existential threat. So basically what we're talking about is nuclear war. Are you for nuclear war? Right? So option one, you're for more people just dying every day, and you're for tens of billions of dollars, maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars more money coming from the West to basically just go in a meat grinder that kills people. That's option one. Option two is you're for World War III and the deaths of probably tens of millions, maybe even billions of people, right? If the nukes start to fly, remember, Russia's got the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. And we've seen some of their missiles. We've seen demonstrations of some of the stuff that they have, and some of their missiles will get through. And they've got nuclear subs and they've got all sorts of stuff. So we're talking about probably hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people dying. Is that what you want? Is that a good option? If those options aren't good options, then what's your option? To me, what Trump is talking about by ending the war, maybe giving Russia a little bit of what they want and stopping the death and preventing Ukraine from getting completely taken over, I think that's a pretty good option. Right? Am I missing something here? I don't think I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, leave it in the comments. But in my opinion, Trump and JD Vance were correct here. And without the out of context clips, if anybody who's watched the full engagement that has any sort of perspective on this matter, they're going to agree with me, I think. That's it, guys. Take care.